Thierry is a grain farmer in Normandy, and he's also somewhat of a chemist. Protective gloves and a mask are necessary when manipulating glyphosate, the most widely used herbicide in human history, introduced by Monsanto in 1974 under the trade name Roundup. Thierry sprays his fields with glyphosate the night before he plants his crops to guarantee a successful harvest.
Tomorrow I'm going to plant a field of peas. With glyphosate, my peas will grow without being attacked by insects. It ensures good results.
The next morning, he's ready to plant his crops. Thierry owns 170 hectares, but as fields go, his have low potential. The soil is rocky and full of clay. He practices conservation agriculture, which means he doesn't plow, covers his fields, and alternates crops. That's why glyphosate is essential for him. But the government wants to ban it in the next 3 years. What are the qualities of glyphosate?
It allows us to produce without spending very much money.
The government says it wants to ban glyphosate in the coming 3 years. How does that make you feel?
At first you feel scared, then angry. And then you wonder if the government isn't making fun of you.
But do you understand the criticism that glyphosate is bad for people's health? Is that something you understand?
Of course I understand. First, because it's a chemical product and we don't eat chemicals. If I could, I'd do without it. We have to find the threshold of effectiveness and productivity. We have to make a living from our work after all.
France is Europe's top agricultural producer and also by far its largest consumer of pesticides. Each year it uses 8,000 to 9,000 tons of glyphosate, mainly in vineyards and in fields. The chemical is cheap, effective, and works on all types of weeds. It penetrates a plant through its leaves and quickly spreads to its roots. Glyphosate has a lot of fans and also a lot of critics. The World Health Organization has said that the enzyme-blocking chemical probably causes cancer, though other agencies dispute that conclusion. Unable to agree on the hazardousness of glyphosate, the European Union controversially extended its lease in Europe for 5 years. France was opposed to that decision and says it wants to ban glyphosate in the next 3 years. According to recent opinion polls, a majority of French people are in favor of a ban. But it's a very different story in the agricultural world. France's leading farmer union has asked for more time. Though the government says it's ready to make exceptions, anger boiled over at the last International Agriculture Show in Paris.
Back in the day, people said asbestos wasn't dangerous. Leaders who let that pass were responsible. Tomorrow, if farmers and consumers say, "You knew about glyphosate but didn't do anything about it," they'll look at me straight in the eyes. They won't go looking for you.
The clock is ticking to find a solution. Farmers who rely on glyphosate say there's nothing like it. Jean-Bernard Lausier has spent the last couple of years testing alternatives. He says there's no miracle solution, but he has hope.
I think, and I'd like to prove, that we can break away from glyphosate. It's just a little bit more complicated, but we can do without it.
By bringing back techniques like plowing and alternating crops, Jean-Bernard has cut glyphosate by 60%. He's part of Défi, a network of 3,000 farms committed to scaling back on chemicals. It's kind of like farming rehab. It's all about being creative, though he hasn't ruled out using glyphosate in an emergency.
The idea is to occupy the soil.
So this is your anti-glyphosate plan?
It's the anti-glyphosate and anti-herbicide plan in general. To occupy the soil of this rapeseed field, I planted white clover to make sure weeds don't grow. White clover and this plant, which is a field bean, are leguminous plants, which means that they trap nitrogen in the air and distribute it to the rapeseed. You just have to have an open mind and look around a bit, observe.
It seems like you're having fun.
Yes, it's a game. It's fascinating. I like to compare my job to the way I take care of my health. I try to lead a healthy life. If by misfortune I get sick, I don't rule out using antibiotics.
Others are exploring ways to break free from chemical weed killers altogether. At this 120-hectare farm, government-backed scientists have been carrying out tests since the year 2000, a project led by this agronomist.
This field hasn't seen a drop of herbicides in the past 18 years.
Using these fields as a lab, Nicolas Munier-Gelin wrote a report for the government. And here's his conclusion.
I think walking away from glyphosate is possible for the vast majority of farmers, including in the next 3 years. It will require adapting their working calendar. Those who say there is no alternative to glyphosate today, it's true there is no chemical alternative, but for me those are people who haven't understood that it's exactly what we're asking farmers to reduce their dependency on chemicals.
Kicking the glyphosate habit is not impossible. Complicated? Yes. Expensive? Maybe. It will require some major soul-searching from the agricultural world and perhaps rethinking the very model of French farming.